We do not know how effective is ecosystem in our lives, so here are the main factors how an ecosystem actually plays a huge role in our lives. Before we go to the technical aspect of ecosystem, we have to know what is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community of living organisms in conjunction with the non-living components of their environment, interacting as a system. These biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. How is human well-being linked to ecosystem services? Humans are fully dependent on Earth's ecosystem and the services that they provide, such as food, clean water, disease regulation, climate regulation, spiritual fulfillment, and aesthetic enjoyment. The relationship between ecosystem services and human well-being is mediated by access to manufactured, human, and social capital. Human well-being depends on ecosystem services but also on the supply and quality of social capital, technology, and institutions. These factors mediate the relationship between ecosystem services and human well-being in ways that remain contested and incompletely understood. The relationship between human well-being and ecosystem services is not linear. When an ecosystem service is abundant relative to the demand, a marginal increase in ecosystem services generally contributes only slightly to human well-being, or may even diminish it. But when the service is relatively scarce, a small decrease can substantially reduce human well-being. How is the economy linked to ecosystem services? Ecosystem services contribute significantly to global employment and economic activity. The ecosystem service of food production contributes by far the most to economic activity and employment. In the year 2000, the market value of food production was $981 billion, or roughly 3% of global gross world product, but it is a much higher share of GDP within developing countries. That year, for example, agriculture, including forestry and fishing, represented 24% of total GDP in countries with per capita incomes less than $765, the low-income developing countries, as defined by the World Bank. The agricultural labor force contained 1.3 billion people globally, approximately a fourth, 22% of the world's population and half, 46% of the total labor force, and some 2.5 billion people, about 40% of the world, lived in agriculturally based households. Significant differences exist between developing and industrial countries in these patterns. For example, in the United States only 2.4% of the labor force works in agriculture. Other ecosystem services, or commodities based on ecosystem services, that make significant contributions to national economic activity include timber, which is around $400 billion, marine fisheries, which is around $80 billion in the year 2000, marine aquaculture, $57 billion in the year 2000, recreational hunting and fishing, which is $50 billion, and $24 to $37 billion annually respectively in the United States alone, as well as edible forest products, botanical medicines, and medicinal plants, and many other industrial products and commodities rely on ecosystem services such as water as inputs. How is poverty linked to ecosystem services? The degradation of ecosystem services is harming many of the world's poorest people and is sometimes the principal factor causing poverty. This is not to say that ecosystem changes things such as increased food production, which have not also helped to lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But these changes have harmed many other communities, and their plight has been largely overlooked. Examples of these impacts include: Number 1. Half of the urban population in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean suffers from one or more diseases associated with inadequate water and sanitation. Approximately 1.7 million people die annually as a result of inadequate water, sanitation, and hygiene. Number 2. The declining state of capture fisheries is reducing a cheap source of protein in developing countries. Per capita fish consumption in developing countries, excluding China, declined between the years 1985 and 1997. Number 3. Desertification affects the livelihoods of millions of people, including a large portion of the poor in dry lands. Hope you understood how an ecosystem actually works. Any questions, you are always welcome to comment in the comment box. So please subscribe to the channel, also like the video if you liked it, and share it with your friends and family. And so thank you for watching and have a nice day.